Hi, and welcome to my channel. I'm Laura, and today's class is yoga for a strong body and strong mind. So, we're going to move in and out of poses. We're going to take our time. And as always, I do suggest having props on hand. Props are an amazing thing to support your body so you can stay into the pose longer and also to find your stillness. Today, I would recommend having possibly a block or two and even a bolster, and a yoga strap could be helpful as well. As always, I will cue different ways to come into different postures so you can make things available for your body and where you're at today in your body. So we're going to go ahead and take a seat, and we're just going to come into a cross-legged seat to start our practice. So allow the left shin to come in front. We're going to make sure that we work both sides of the body. And we're just going to begin by settling into ourselves and onto our mat. Go ahead and allow your gaze to start to soften. And we'll start just by allowing ourselves to come to stillness. The hands can come to rest on the top of the knees. Maybe palms facing down if you feel like you need that security of having the hands and staying within yourself. Palms facing up if you feel open, ready to take on the world. As your gaze starts to soften, maybe the eyelids start to feel a little more heavy. You can allow yourself to fully close the eyes if you feel comfortable in your space. Start to notice the connection of the sit bones to the mat. Those bony parts of the pelvis that are making most of the connection with the mat. Feel into the breath and notice how the belly expands. Not just in the front of the abdomen, but also on the left and the right sides, even expanding into the back body. Traveling up the spine, maybe you notice how the shoulders rise and fall with the breath. Catching that wave of the inhale and the exhale. Maybe you even notice how the shoulders and the collarbone separate and they move outward on every inhale and softly draw inward on the exhale. Keep in mind, we're just here as observers. We don't need to control or force the breath. We're just noticing these very small movements that often go unnoticed during our day. Take a couple of minutes here just to notice your own breath and any special qualities that you have. Maybe you can find a point of origination where your breath starts. Anything you notice here is neither good nor bad. It's just the qualities in ourselves, and sometimes those qualities in our breath echo within the physicalities of our body. We'll start the movement portion of our class. You can softly start to blink the eyes open. And from here, we're going to start with a couple of twists to wake up the spine. To begin the class, we're going to stay with that left shin in front of the right. We're going to start to twist over towards the right. Take the left hand to the outside of the right knee. And then the chest starts to revolve over towards the right. Often, I know myself, I do also cue. You can gaze past the right shoulder. But today, I want you to think more of keeping the gaze neutral and concentrate on that twist coming from the spine, from the shoulders down to the middle of the back, past the middle of the back. And think about drawing the right shoulder further behind you. The gaze doesn't need to help it. You can just use the shoulder, this very small movement, to draw the right shoulder back, as the left shoulder, using the help of the left hand, maybe inches forward, just slightly more. As you exhale, you create a little bit more space. Maybe you find a little deepening of the twist. Keep that breath moving throughout the body as we hold in this twist. Allowing yourself to stay up nice and tall and prevent yourself from collapsing into the low back. When you're ready, we're going to return back to center. Let's take a pause in center. Inhale. Exhale, release it out, maybe opening up the mouth. Inhale. Let's exhale, twist over towards the left. So now the right hand's going to go to the outside of the left knee. And we start to open up towards the left. Again, not so worried about the gaze, but think about the movement coming through the upper body, the torso, the chest, and the shoulders. As you twist further, inhale, creating space, and then exhale, moving a little deeper into that space. Maybe you notice the gaze starts to travel on its own and finds new areas of the room to explore. I can tell in my own self that this is definitely a more difficult side to twist on. As I do so, I need to remind myself to relax in the posture, allow other body parts to soften, so I'm not compensating, just to make the twist deeper. On an inhale, let's come back to center and release. One more cleansing breath. Inhale through the nose. Exhale, release it out through the mouth. Switching the legs so we get benefits of the twist in a little different manner. We're going to start again by going to the right. We'll take the left hand to the outside of the right knee, maybe noticing a different feel here, even by the switching out of the hips. One side's probably a little more tightly wound than the other. Let's inhale, come back to center. One cleansing breath before we move on. We'll inhale and then exhale, twist for the last time, moving over towards the left. The right hand comes to the outside of the left knee. Wonderful. Inhale, return to center. And from here, just allow the breath to be normal before we move on. Allow the shoulders to relax once more. Maybe even give a little rotation of the shoulders, drawing them up to the ears, and then allowing them to release down the back. When you're ready, we're going to turn and come onto all fours and take a quick cat and cow, but mindful as we move through it. Let's inhale, drop the belly, allow the gaze to rise just slightly. And then exhale, press into the shins. Allow the back to round and the shoulders to dome across the back, spreading out as we push into the fingers. Head hangs heavy. Inhale for cow. Exhale for cat pose. One last time, coming into cat. And when you're ready, we're going to push back and sit onto our heels. Maybe bring a block or two with you as we convert ourselves into a toe stand. A lot of folks like to call this the toe crusher because it is very intense into the bottoms of the feet. So wherever you're at, we're either going to shift into all fours or put your hands on the top of your blocks. We're going to tuck all of the toes. So try to make sure even the pinky toe edge of the foot is tucked. From here, you can slowly shift the hips back onto the heels. And as you can see, the weight of my body is rested into these blocks. So I don't have 100% of my weight back onto my heels, but I'm still getting a very significant stretch into the bottoms of my feet and into my toes. You can also have the hands all the way down onto the mat and even shift the weight forward a little further. You have to play around with this and find what you can tolerate for about the next 1 to 2 minutes. And if you feel like you want to start to come all the way up onto the heels, even bringing the hands to prayer and holding here, by all means do so. If it becomes too intense or sharp, you can just lean forward and come onto your blocks and take some of the weight out of it. Definitely one of the most challenging poses for me. If you've had any injury into your ankles or your toes or foot issues, sometimes working into the feet can be much more surprising than you ever thought. Shift forward all the way until you untuck those toes, allow them to release, and then the tops of the feet can come to the mat. From here, let's just give them a gentle pat onto the mat so we can release the blood flow back into the toes and into the ankles. Very good. You can set your blocks just out of the way. Start to shift the hips back, and we're going to sit onto the tops of the feet. So we've come into our hero pose. This already is a nice stretch into the tops of the feet. We're going to make it a little bit more active. Remember, this is a stronger yoga for body and mind. So this requires a little bit of concentration and focus just to come into some of these postures. We'll start by just tilting back, having the hands about across from the ankles so that you can use them as a little kickstand. We'll start by doing one knee at a time, lifting the left knee, stretching out into the top of that left foot and lowering down, and doing the same with the right knee, lifting and lowering. Also can be a little bit of a core challenge here just by lifting the knee. Release it down. Right side, lift, and then lower. Once more on each side. Excellent. From here, you can certainly come up and take a little break. Take the weight off of the tops of the feet. If you are ready, you can have the hands placed back where you had them by the ankles and start to lift both of the knees up off of the mat. And we're going to hold here for about 20 to 30 seconds. Again, this is using that strength of mind and body to allow yourself to stay in this posture. If you want to really go for it, you can release the hands and take them up to prayer for a little balance. That'll challenge the strength into the legs and also into the ankles. I definitely don't feel like I want to hold that for 20 seconds today, though. So we're going to stay right on the tops of the feet, stretching out into the ankles. Take one more nice inhale and release it out. Slowly start to walk the hands forward. Allow the knees to softly plant onto the mat. Come into a tabletop position. And again, we're going to tap out the tops of those feet to release the blood flow and increase the circulation. You can also go ahead and take a little ankle roll, maybe one at a time, moving mindfully and slowly so that we don't rebound into anything painful. When you're ready, we're going to go ahead and shift the ankles out to the side and prepare for our caterpillar pose or a seated forward fold. For this posture, you may want either a block, or I do enjoy having a bolster underneath my knees, and come into a gentle version of caterpillar here as we move into the next series. So placing a pillow, a blanket, a bolster, whatever works for you underneath your knees, allow them to be generously bent. And from here, we're going to go ahead and allow the hips to fold and our torso just to fold over the tops of our legs as we rest into our caterpillar pose. As you come into a folded posture, it's a great reminder because it makes us so much more aware of the breath and how it moves through the body. You can feel how the skin stretches across the backside of the spine into the lower back. Right now the legs are bent, but if you have chosen to take caterpillar with a straighter leg, you may notice the tension that you have into the backside, perhaps into the hamstrings or calf muscles. Direct your breath into the tension and feel and maybe even picture the breath expanding into the body. Sometimes having visual images help us perpetuate what we want to enact within ourselves. Not just physically, but that can also be a great mental attribute to have, to actualize what we want to happen. On the next inhale, we're going to go ahead and walk our hands up if you're using a bolster or any support. We're going to go ahead and just set that out of the way for now and prepare into the next pose, which will come into deer pose. For deer, we're going to begin with the right shin parallel with the top side of the mat. And then the left shin will be parallel with the left long edge of the mat. Now, you may have a slight bend in the shin or a bend in both of the knees. That is perfectly acceptable. It does depend on your body type. If you can, start by sitting up nice and tall. You might even need a block off and underneath the right hand just to give yourself a little bit of leverage to keep you over the top of the sit bones. That can take some effort because this is quite a challenge onto both of the hips. We're going to make that a bit more of a challenge by seeing how much strength we have into that left hip. We're going to start by doing some heel lifts. And so for our heel lifts, the more upright you are, the more challenging it is going to be by sure. If you want to make it a little easier on yourself, you'll probably want to walk the hands forward and shift the weight forward. That helps counteract the weight of that heavy leg that's behind you. We're going to try to move the heel for 4. So start by pushing that left knee into the earth and pick that back left foot up as far as you can. It might be just a tiny, tiny amount. We're going to hold and then lower for 1, lift and lower for 2, lift, lower for 3, lift, release it down for 4. We're going to lift on this last one and hold for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Very good. Go ahead and let it go. If you do need to take a couple of windshield wipers to release the hips, if you feel any cramping within the hip, by all means, go ahead and do so. We're going to move into our next hip mobility challenge here. And this time you might find this a little more easier, but we're going to lift up that left knee and open up the hip for 1 and lower down. Lift for 2 and lower. Lifting up for 3 and down. 4 and lower. 5, and we'll hold for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Again, if you need to take those windshield wipers or release the hips for a moment, go ahead and take that. When you're ready, we're going to come to our ultimate challenge in this posture, and we're going to attempt to lift the entire left leg. Again, shifting the torso forward will help you with that heavy, heavy leg. Being more upright is much more challenging. If you're ready, we're going to start to, you'll slightly shift onto the right hip and then lift that left leg for 1 and lower down. Lifting up for 2 and lower. Up for 3 and down. Lift for 4 and down. Here comes that hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Very good. Again, this is your chance for some windshield wipers. You might be feeling it into that hip, maybe both hips. And then when you're ready, we're going to return back to that deer pose with our right shin in line with the top edge of the mat. And we're going to go ahead and take a fold. You can go ahead and have the blocks underneath the forearms to start with, or you can also come all the way down onto your mat. And we're going to hold our deer pose. Finding ease and stillness in these poses is such a challenge. Often if you do work a lot of vinyasa and more quicker paced flow classes, which are beautiful in their own right, you can sometimes give yourself permission to move out of the pose much more quickly than if you're in a slow flow class. When you're moving slowly, there really isn't too many places to go to get out of this pose. To allow yourself to stay in it and to stay with it, we have the breath. And that's where we find our breath. And we start to make changes within to seek that relaxation. And with time, that relaxation becomes second nature. When you're ready, let's lift up from our deer pose. I'm going to just move my blocks out of the way. And from here, I'm going to just allow the left knee to slightly stack on top of the right. The knees aren't completely stacked, but I'm going to take just a little side bend. This beautiful mermaid side bend always feels so good to me. The left hand can touch the mat, and we're going to draw the right arm up and over. Maybe revolve that chest up towards the ceiling. Reach with the right fingertips. That right hip stays heavy and connected with the mat. So you're getting this great stretch along the outside of the right hip, all the way up into the ribs and even underneath that right armpit. And then let's go ahead and inhale, bring it back. Coming into cow face pose, so we're going to keep the right knee bent and we're going to swing that left knee up and around so it comes on top of the right. So we have our stacked cow face legs. You can always sit up a little bit higher in this posture if it makes it a little bit more easy for you. And don't fret if your knee is lifted or not perfectly stacked on top of the other. Just if you can hold this pose without feeling any sharpness, then you are in good shape. For our cow face pose, we're going to switch up the arms a little bit and we're going to take eagle pose arms. So for this, we'll have the left elbow bent and then we're going to stack the right elbow on top. You can either allow the backs of the hands to meet or palms come to touch. And from here, As we would in our regular cow face, we'll start to shift forward with the hips and come into a forward bend. I like to have a block set up underneath my elbows so that my elbows can rest onto the block and stay a little bit more supported in this forward bend. In this posture, having a support with the arms, I'm getting still a stretch across the upper back and into the shoulders by having the eagle pose arms. But using the block allows me to stay heavy and connected with the hips so that they're still reaching for the mat, and I'm getting a bigger stretch into my hips and into my low back. Another nice inhale in. And release it out. On the next inhale, try to use your core to come back upright. Unwind the arms, remove the block so it's not in the way, and we're going to go ahead and shift back onto the hips and take a couple of windshield wipers. For our next posture, we're going to spin the legs around, and we're going to come again to sitting onto the tops of our feet like we would in hero's pose, and we're going to prepare for rabbit pose. Such a great posture for opening up into the shoulders and into the back of the neck. We want to aim for having the crown of the head rather close to the knees, so aim for about 6 to 8 inches away from the knees. You'll notice as I start to tuck here, I'm really rounding into a very, very small ball, and I'm just coming onto almost the very top of the crown. As I start to lift the hips, I'm going to take a hold of the ankles. And as I lift the hips, I come right onto the crown of the head. It might take a little adjustment until you get used to the shape of this posture. But you can use the height of the hips to feel into the upper back. As you lift the hips, you're going to get more of a stretch into the shoulders and the neck. Notice I'm not crunching into my neck. It might be a little hard to see, but my chin does have a space away from the center of my chest, and obviously it is easy for me to talk in this posture. Take one more inhale, and then we'll exhale, release the heels down, roll ourselves back up, and then we're going to kick the heels back out from underneath us. Extend the legs out long for caterpillar once more. This time in our caterpillar pose, try to do this either with a lower level prop or even coming all the way down to the mat. We're going to look for a little bit more straightness into the legs. When you're ready, we're going to start by being nice and tall and then start to hinge forward from the hips. Allow yourself to drape over the top of those legs. And we'll spend a moment here, again in caterpillar. Personally, I know I struggle a lot with tightness into my middle of my back and also into my shoulders. That is due to a strengthening routine that I am working on. Of course, sometimes as you work out certain areas of the body, they react and they get tight. So that is where I'm tight, but using the breath, just to picture the shoulders and that part of the body expanding and creating more space. Feels like an internal massage that you can give yourself just by staying with it, staying in the posture. On an inhale, we're going to come back to an upright position. We're going to take that deer sequence over onto the opposite side. I'm going to spin myself around, and you can do so as well. The left shin will face the back side of the mat, and now the right shin will face that long Well, it's currently your right side of the mat now. So we have this 90-90 posture. Again, if the shins are bent in a little bit more to accommodate for the knees, that's totally fine. And then have the feet flexed. Just as we did on the other side, we're going to start by staying seated nice and tall. But as we try to make the heel lifts, knee lifts, and the leg lifts, if you need to shift the torso forward to help lift that heavy leg, by all means do so. When you're ready, we're going to start with those heel lifts. So finding what works for you, notice that each side can be very, very different. We're going to take 5 lifts, starting with 1 and lowering down. Lifting for 2 and lower. Lifting for 3, lower down. Lifting for 4 and down. And 5. We're going to hold here for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Touch down. Go ahead and give yourself a little wiggle if you have some tightness or cramping into that hip. And when you're ready, we're going to move into the knee lifts. Lifting for 1 and lower. Up for 2 and down. Up for 3 and down. 4, lower. Finally, we lift for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead and lower. Release it out if you need to do some windshield wipers. We're going to move into that whole leg lift. And so from here, you may need to shift onto that left hip just slightly to accommodate for that weight and the lift. Stay upright if you can, otherwise walk the torso slightly forward, and then we're going to lift the right leg up for 1 and lower. For 2, this is definitely a tougher side for me. Up for 3 and down. Up for 4 and lower. 5, we're going to hold it. Feel those shakes for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's go to the earth. Bring the hands behind you. Maybe take a couple of windshield wipers. Release the legs. When you're ready, we're going to resettle back into that deer pose on this side, facing the back of the mat. You can stay up high in your deer pose, or if you want, you can start to come down onto your forearms, or even laying fully across the front of that left shin. And we'll hold here in our deer pose. Now focusing the weight of the torso really onto that left hip. Give your upper body permission to relax in this posture. And when you're ready, we'll come back upright. Go ahead and move the blocks so that they aren't in the way. Maybe take a windshield wiper or 2 if that feels good. And then we're going to move into a seated posture that I like to call chicken wing. So for chicken wing, I think I'm going to do this facing the camera so you can see it a little bit more easily. Have the feet open so that they're nice and wide. So you're in this wide seated stance. And then this is going to be a very big internal movement of the shoulders. So we can start by having the backs of the hands and bring them to just the side ribs. My hands are very cold, so this is actually hard for me to do already. And then from here, we want to try to get the elbows to the inside of the knees. So we can see it kind of looks like I have little chicken wings going on here. And this can be really, really intense on the shoulders, even onto the wrists and the hands. So if you want, you can also do just one arm at a time. As if you are doing one arm, you can use that knee to shift and bring that elbow more in towards the midline of the body. And then, of course, if you're doing one arm at a time, make sure you switch it out and you do the opposite side. If you're doing both arms, if you're able to achieve this little funky movement, if you can take any internal movement of the knees, you can start to bring both of the knees in towards midline and just allow the head and the neck to relax and take this nice, very intense, strong posture. Very good. We're going to release that. Allow the knees to widen to release the arms. Maybe give the hands a little bit of a shake out. We're going to come again to kneeling onto the tops of our feet, and we're going to take a little stretch opposite of that direction, and we're going to intertwine the fingers, draw them back behind us in a fist, and then start to open up the shoulders, open up the chest as you drive the fist down towards the mat, maybe even reaching the mat. If you are touching the mat and you can't go any further, maybe think about creating more space by lifting the chest up further and away from the hands. So the hands can't go anywhere, but you can still lift the chest. And when you're ready, go ahead and release the hands. From here, we're going to come into a nice side lying twist. So let's come onto our backs. We're going to prepare like we would for a reclined twist, rolling onto our backs. And then from here, we're going to come onto the very outside edge of that right hip. So shifting the hips over, I start by shifting them over to the left about 1 inch or 2, and then drawing both of the knees, allowing them to fall over to the right. My spine is still in alignment from crown to tail, and then the back, my shoulders are reaching for the mat. They may be both flat on the mat. If the left shoulder is lifted, that's okay. It's quite natural, but just think about trying to keep that movement of having the left shoulder open and driving towards the mat. You can stay right here in your reclined twist, but if you want to take it further, you can come into cat pulling its tail pose. To do that, I'm going to take the right foot, and I'm going to bring that back and try to take a hold of the right foot with my left hand. From here, my left knee can still stay crossed over my body and bent. This is a much deeper variation of your reclined twist. Also, it increases the back bend. So if it's too much on your lower back, you can by all means leave it out. In your cat pulling its tail pose, if you are here, you can stay right here, or you can extend that left leg out long. You may even want to have a strap to take a hold of the left foot. Maybe your arm's long enough to reach your left foot. But wherever you're at, whether you're in your reclined twist or a cat pulling its tail, let's take a deep breath in. Exhale, release it out. One more in. And exhale it out. Wonderful. Let's start to release the legs, release that right foot. We're going to roll onto our belly. And from here, we're going to take our broken wing pose. So take another opening into the front of that right shoulder. The right arm will come out into a cactus shape or a little goalpost. And then we'll take the left hand out beside our face and just shift over onto the right hip, maybe allowing that left foot to come behind us. As you can see, this opens up fairly deeply into the front of the right shoulder. And then you can use that left hand as leverage, just to give yourself a little more oomph, a little bit extra into that stretch. When you're ready, we're going to come out of our shoulder opener. Take both of the hands underneath the shoulders and let's push back and come up to a seated position. We're just going to spin ourselves around. I'm going to come to the back of my mat this time, sitting down and then rolling down onto my back for that recline twist or cat pulling its tail. So again, setting ourselves up, I'm going to lift my hips up and offset them over to the right about 1 or 2 inches. And then both of the knees drop over to the left side. So I'm in this recline twist. Feels great already right here. You can keep the right arm out at a T shape or even a cactus shape. But if you want to take the cat pulling its tail version and deepen this twist even more, you can start to draw that left foot back behind you. You might have to lift your hips a little bit so you can get it towards the right hand. Take a hold of that left foot with the right hand. Keep the chest facing the sky, both of the shoulders onto the mat or reaching for the mat if you can. The right leg can stay bent with the left hand to the outside of the thigh, or you can extend the right leg out long. Really go for the full twist. Extend it out long is going to be the most intense on the back bend and also into the twist. But you'll also start to feel a stretch into the outside, maybe into the IT band, much more intensely into that right hip flexor. Start to release your twist. Release that back foot. We're going to slowly come onto our bellies and take that broken wing pose onto the opposite shoulder. So now the left arm can come out to a cactus shape. And then we're going to allow the left side of the face to come to the mat as we roll onto the very outer edge of the left hip for a little stretch. Now, always coming to just that point where you really feel a very good kind of a hurt so good into the stretch. Never going past the point or to a point where you feel like you're holding your breath, just to stay in it. And when you're ready, we're going to go ahead and softly roll out of that posture. And then we're going to shift back onto our knees, come to a seat. And from here, we're going to take the feet out wide, about the width of our yoga mat. You can play with the distance as far as how far away the hips are from you. We're going to bring both of the arms to the inside of the feet. And then we're going to just allow ourselves to drape in between the knees and relax in this wide-legged posture. The head and the neck can hang heavy, and if it feels good, you can even take the hands, interlace them behind the very back of the head, and just allow the weight of the arms to maybe draw the head down a little further. Again, notice I can talk very clearly in this posture. I'm not scrunching the chin towards the chest. I'm creating length in the back of the neck, all the way from tailbone, traveling up the length of the spine through the neck, even into the back of the head until I reach the crown. Very slowly, you can interlace the fingers, however you want to say that. And we're going to start to bring ourselves to an upright posture. You can cross the legs, and we're going to close our practice in just a cross-legged position. Allow the hands to come to the tops of the knees. Palms can be facing down or facing up. However you feel suits your mood for this practice. And we're going to close by just, again, reassessing, reconnecting into the body. Feeling maybe a little more open into the hips. Maybe space created across the chest and into the upper body. Maybe a little more space made into the mind. More freedom from thoughts that perhaps were restricting us. More freedom into our bodies to be ourselves. On the next inhale, we're going to draw the arms up, fingertips reaching for the sky. Draw the palms together and then bring them down through heart center as we close our practice together. Thank you for joining me on this practice and being strong every day in your life. As always, I hope you have a great day. Make it a good one. Bye.